Hey folks, welcome back to Canada's Boxing Channel. How's everyone doing today? Hope everyone's having a good day wherever you are in the world. So about 3 weeks ago I made my initial prediction for the upcoming Daniel Dubois Joseph Parker fight, and at that time I think it's fair to say I had a few splinters in my ass because I was sort of still fence sitting a little bit. And I was explaining that, it was my preference for Joe Parker. It was almost like I want him to win without really explaining why I was thinking he was going to win. Well, today I have to double down on Joe Parker. I'm committed now to him being my pick for this upcoming fight. And I'll explain why I arrive at the conclusions I do arrive at. You'll notice that Possum is not with me. Possum and myself had a falling out this morning over the Catterall Barboza Jr. fight, and she's refused to play anymore. So, so she's just sleeping downstairs on the couch. I couldn't get her to come up with me. Anyways, without further ado, let's talk about this fight in some more detail. We'll talk about some common opponents, their tail of the tape, and why I think that Joseph Parker is my bet for prevailing over Daniel Dubois. The fight, of course, as we know, is for the World IBF Heavyweight Championship. Dubois is the champion, Parker is the challenger, and it's being held just over a week's time on February the 22nd in the Kingdom Arena in Riyadh, Saudi Arabia. The betting odds remain pretty much as they were a few weeks ago. Decimal odds 1.43 for Dubois, 2.90 for Parker. So Dubois remains a strong favorite. That shows that most of the money that's out there is betting on Dubois. He's certainly the bookies' favorite. So I'm going to go for the underdog, and we'll see at the end of the day whether or not my bookie is getting an extra holiday in Hawaii, or whether I'm managing to claw back some of my losses. Okay, I also mentioned in a previous video that Anthony Joshua and Martin Bakole were picking Parker. Dillian White, on the other hand, is picking Dubois. So clearly there is a divide amongst professional boxers as to who they favor. But like I was saying in my video about AJ picking Parker, we never really know what their underlying motivation is, right? So let's have a look. The champion first, Daniel Dubois. He's from the UK. He's rated number 2 in the world. Number 1, of course, is Alexander Usyk. He's 27 years old. He's a big fellow. He's 6'5", with 78-inch reach, and his record is 22-2-0. He lost, of course, to Alexander Usyk. There was the low blow controversy. We all remember that. Nevertheless, he lost. He was stopped by Usyk in that fight. And he also lost to Joe Joyce back in 2020. Of course, that loss, I believe he fractured the orbital bone in his eye. So while he was sort of stopped with a jab, he probably made the right call. He knew that something was seriously wrong. And there's an argument. Did he quit, or did he make an informed decision to preserve his health? And that's an argument that'll probably pass back and forth amongst fans for quite some time. He's beaten most recently in reverse order Jarrell Miller in a good solid fight where he was tested. Miller, to be fair, is pretty much a stationary target, right? But still, it was a good, solid fight. And interestingly, Miller had really given him the gears in the upcoming, in the preliminaries, the press conference and stuff like that. It really sort of tested Dubois psychologically, and Dubois seemed to come through that with no issues. He then went on to beat Hrgovic, who was very, very highly touted and was favored going into that fight. And then most recently, he beat AJ in really quite spectacular fashion. Let's see at Parker's tail of the tape. Parker's rated number 7 in the world. He's a New Zealander, of course, though I think he's been sort of adopted by British fans. He's sort of not viewed as, so much of a foreigner, as being, sort of an honorary Brit. Comes across as a very, very likable, humble, and quite funny guy as well. I think he's sort of secretly becoming a little bit of a fan favorite in his own right. He's 33 years old. People talk about Parker as a veteran, as though he's sort of 43, because of course he's had a long career. He started his professional career in 2012. He's even fought people like Franz Botha and Carlos Takam. But Franz Botha went, wow, he fought Lennox Lewis, he fought Tyson, he fought Shannon Briggs. So he's got sort of historical names on his record. He's, like I mentioned, he's 33 years old. He's 6'4", so he's a little bit shorter than Dubois. It looks a bit more, actually, when you see them sort of face to face. It looks like that height difference is a bit more. And he's got a shorter reach than Dubois as well. He's got a 76-inch reach. And his professional record is 35, 3, and 0. He's lost to AJ. He lost to Dillian White. And he lost to Joe Joyce. I'm not so troubled by those losses. I mean, losses are losses, right? Like I don't, as you know, I don't really like fighters to maintain a 0. Unless you're absolutely, the second coming of Harry Greb or Sugar Ray Robinson, you probably should have a 0. But if we look at the losses in the AJ fight, I think he being Parker was fighting AJ and the ref. The refs didn't seem to allow Parker to fight AJ. Your mileage may vary on this. I mean, I like AJ, and I'm not being disrespectful, but I just didn't think that Parker was allowed to fight the fight he wanted to fight. And if you look at the fight against Dillian White, again, which he lost, White was totally on his chin strap at the end. He was gassed. I mean, if we'd had a couple more rounds, it would have well gone the other way. There's an argument for 15-round fights. As you know, I actually prefer 15-round fights but anyhow, I've made a video about that, and it's probably never going to change. And with his loss to Joe Joyce, Parker claims that he was sick, that he'd been sort of ill, and like ill in bed, not just, sniffles. So I don't know. It's interesting, of course, that Joe Joyce has beaten both these guys. And if we look at where Joe Joyce is now, it just goes to show that boxing is a game of, like the old kids' board game of snakes and ladders, isn't it? Wow. It's Joe Joyce, beaten both these guys, and, who knows, eh? Anyways, moving on. Now, this is why I think that Parker's going to win. I didn't think when Dubois was fighting Joe Joyce that he really handled Joe Joyce's jab as well as Parker did. Now, that's what I'm really saying here is I'm thinking that while Dubois is offensively gifted, he's not defensively gifted. And also, when he was fighting Hrgovic, he didn't really box Hrgovic. He kind of came out a little bit sluggishly and kind of went into a slugfest with Hrgovic. Not a lot of defensive skills on display. You might remember, Hrgovic was peppering him with the right hand. And this is why many of us thought that AJ would smoke Dubois. Because if Philip Hrgovic is landing as many right hands as he was handing, AJ, we all thought, at least I thought, should have been just flattening Dubois. But, Dubois got into essentially a slugfest. That's the only word I can think of with Hrgovic, and he was slugging harder. I mean, Hrgovic laid all the heavy leather he could on Dubois, and then he was gassed, and of course his face was a mess, and the ref stopped it. If we go back a bit further, Dubois was also slow starting, and it didn't really box well against Kevin Lerena. Of course, you know, he beat him. I'm not suggesting that he didn't, but he didn't show a lot of defensive nous. He relies very much on the fact that he is offensively blessed. He's got firepower. Absolutely. I mean, arguably the hardest hitter in heavyweight boxing today. I say arguably because maybe Zhilei Zhang, probably between those two, I would think, right? And of course, against Miller, it wasn't really a boxing match either. It was a case of, again, slugging it out. And Miller, of course, is 300-pound Zeppelin, right? I mean, you couldn't miss. The other thing that I question about Dubois is, does he lose heart? Does he kind of switch off a little bit? Like, if we look at what happened in the Usyk fight, he believes that he had properly, legitimately, legally dropped Usyk. The ref thought it wasn't the case. The ref thought it was a low blow. And of course, fans can argue back and forth about this, right? I've got my opinion. I thought it was a low blow. But hey, you know, there's a very strong argument to be made either which way. The fact remains, however, that when Usyk was up and ready to fight again, well, Dubois was not on him like Sonny Liston would have been, or Jack Dempsey would have been, or Mike Tyson would have been. It's almost as though Dubois had, oh well, and we're back to boxing. He didn't seem to have that what's the right word? That killer, right? That, you know, you can imagine that, say, a Sonny Liston would have had, right? So I don't know. Question mark, and I raise this only because question mark about whether or not Dubois has heart to keep going. A lot of people say that that's been addressed by the fact that he had the slugfest with Miller and with Hrgovic. I'm not sure. Now, if we look at, if we go back and we have a look, let me see. So also in his fight with AJ, which is his best fight, most biggest win, I guess, certainly most exciting win, you know, starched him in 5 rounds, right? Multiple knockdowns, very, very, you know, very demonstrative, turning AJ into a meme, doing something to AJ nobody else had done. But we must remember that AJ got hit really early, and I think sort of discombobulated. And as I said in a video that I made about this fight, Dubois and AJ, if you look at AJ, it looks like he maybe twisted his ankle. There's a lot of things that you can say didn't go right for AJ, and of course then they compounded one on top of the other. And as I've said before, if only AJ had had his left hand up, it could have gone so much differently. Anyhow, it's not convincing to me that Dubois is defensively skilled. And I would say his defense wasn't tested in any of his recent fights. Like I've said, with slugfest with Hrgovic, AJ never really got into gear. God knows what was wrong with AJ that day. I don't know, it's just weird, eh? And with Miller, again, slugfest. Now, if we go back and we look at Parker, Parker, of course, yes, we've explained his losses. He lost to AJ White and Joyce. He's beaten Andy Ruiz, he beat Chisora twice, he beat Wilder, though big question mark about Wilder. Wilder is, in my view, Wilder never really was a great fighter, and now most certainly isn't. But he beat Zhang. Now, even though Zhang dropped him twice, he showed a lot of skill. He's cagey, cunning, very experienced, didn't get panicked, didn't flap, and showed that he can take one hell of a hit. I mean, like I say, Zhang has got to be one of the hardest hitters in the heavyweight division. He beats Andy Ruiz on the back foot, and then when he fights Hughie Fury, he's on the front foot. So he can fight both ways, right? He's a smart fighter. He's not as maybe one-dimensional as Dubois. And when he fought against AJ, even though, like I said, he wasn't allowed to fight the fight he wanted to fight, he wanted to get in there and dog it out with AJ, and the ref was, in my view, the ref was, would it be too much to say the ref was protecting AJ? Maybe that's an overstatement, but you know what I mean. The ref didn't really allow the fight to develop. But look how and of course he lost to AJ. I'm not suggesting he didn't, but he handled AJ's jab and handled AJ's offense really rather well. He's got the ability to move, whereas I'm not seeing that ability to move so much in Dubois. And he outboxed all of these people. When I say outboxed all of them, I mean he outboxed people like Zhang, who, he didn't try and slug it out with Zhang. He used his brain. He outboxed Zhang. He was knocked down, yes, he took 10-8s, but he carried on to a plan and he outboxed. He showed a lot of good defensive skills. And he's also a heavy guy as well. He doesn't have the firepower that Dubois has, but I'm quite certain that if Parker can land on someone's chin, they're going to go down. This is heavyweight boxing. So for those reasons, I'm thinking that Parker has the offense to significantly impact Dubois, and he's got a better defense than Dubois. Dubois is a powerhouse with both hands, but has he fought somebody who came with better boxing skills? Hrgovic was happy to slugfest. Miller was Miller, and AJ never got into gear. So for that reason, I'm thinking a points win for Parker. If Dubois is to win, Dubois is going to knock out Parker probably in the first half of the fight. But I believe that Parker's defense is going to see him through to the end of the fight, and I think it's going to go to the judges' scorecards, and that Parker will win a points decision. And I know that goes against the narrative. It goes against what people are saying, that Dubois is a strong favorite. It also goes against the old adage to you've got to win the belts, you've got to comprehensively beat the champ. I think it'll be a unanimous points win for Joseph Parker. There you go. That's my take. Please let me know in the comments section what you think, and whether you think my analysis of this fight makes sense to you, and whether you think it's going to be Dubois or Parker, method of victory, all that stuff. Let's get a conversation going. Thanks very much. Please like, please share, please subscribe. It's awesome getting some subscribers. That's really, really cool. But most importantly, wherever you are, just have an awesome day. Thanks very much. Cheers. Bye-bye.